This is Craig and Andrew, two Ranger qualified Army officers with MBAs, here to help you improve your business through leadership.
Each week, we'll deliver easy lessons from the battlefield to the boardroom on how to improve team performance. If you're a leader or want to be, this is the place for you.
Welcome to the cohort.
Disclaimer: the views in this podcast are those of the authors alone and do not represent the views of the Department of Defense or the U.S. Army.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode.
Good morning, everyone.
This morning, we're going to talk a little bit about performance improvement coaching and what those conversations look like. Because as leaders, a lot of times we have to help our team, whether they're struggling with a particular skill set or maybe they've just, been having some challenges with the standards that we're expecting out of them.
Yeah, I'm glad you said standards because that's kind of really, to me, today kind of comes back to that. Coming back to the standards, maintaining the standards. This is one of the tools to do that. So I think it'd be useful because it's going to come up. You're going to have to do this. You're going to have to go over uh, correcting things from time to time. And they can be difficult conversations or they can be great conversations, but you got to do it. So,
Yeah, and I think that, we're dealing with humans and nobody's perfect. And so at some point along, everybody's journey, they're not going to meet every standard. There's going to be a time where maybe it's a rough day, or maybe it's just, you're trying to put somebody in a new position, new responsibilities, and they're having some challenges. And leaders are responsible for those difficult conversations. And how do we coach our team up to get them to that standard? Because it's not to put anybody down. It's not to just immediately, you don't get cut from the team the first time you miss a block, but you have to have that conversation. There's accountability to that standard but how does the leader go about that conversation? And so today we're gonna share a template that we've come up with. It's just to outline, to help people go through these, because these can, like you said, be tough conversations,
yeah.
but you have to have them. This goes back to, we talked about conflict. You can't run from it. You've got to have the conversation.
Yeah, that's great too. You can't run from it. You gotta.
Yeah. So I'm going to share our screen here, put this template up. And for those of you listening, this will be on our website under resources. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. But if you're on Spotify or another platform, you can always go to our website at commandpostcohort.com. And under the resources, we've got all of our products there where you'll be able to download and use these templates that we hope you find some value in. So anytime you're looking at, having that tough conversation and bringing somebody in, to me, the most important thing about it is to try to keep it to the facts and keep it about, the actual outcomes and not make it personal.
Yeah,
Because as soon as we get personalities involved, it overcomplicates everything. It does not bring value. And so throughout this, to me, that's kind of a running theme, is to just make sure when you're having these conversations, it's not about, a lot of times I try to even not use names when we're talking about this. We just talk about pure performance and stay as objective as possible.
yeah. That's critical, man. Because if you go down the route of making it personal, then all of this is lost.
Right. Because you're trying to, you've got to put yourself in that other person's shoes. If they have, made some mistakes or they know they're not meeting that standard, most of your team members are not out to sabotage your organization. They're trying to do the right thing. And we have to kind of give them that benefit of the doubt, especially early on. Now, if this is, if Craig's been doing the same thing for 18 months now and you've tried this, like this is your 18th conversation, I get it. That's
It's a
that's
different
different.
conversation.
Yeah. But what we're talking about here today is this is early on. This is when you know they have the potential, you know they have the capabilities, but we're just trying to coach them to that level to improve that performance to get them back on that standard. And so what we've got here on this template is something to kind of help you formulate that. A lot of organizations have their own documents, and that's fine. This is just for those who may not. And you may want to use this for an informal conversation before you get to the level of using your company's
Mm.
official documents. Or you may just want to use this as a supplement to kind of make sure you're addressing these things that may or may not be included on those tools that you already have available. So number one we've got on here is define the performance challenge. And I think this is, we got to start with what problem are we trying to solve here?
Yeah. Yeah. Why are we here today? What are we talking
Exactly.
about today?
And try to be as specific as possible. Because what I've found before is sometimes like you may be thinking that the challenge is, I use the example of motivation. Well, Craig's just not motivated. He just doesn't have the work ethic. And like those are, I'm not saying those aren't real things, but the challenge is when you're having that conversation with a person, it seems to them a lot of times it's very ambiguous and they will try to defend that because it is, kind of ambiguous. And I think back to, if we can ask, so, okay, hey, what happened on this project? Almost treating it the same way like we talked about AARs of what was supposed to happen, what actually happened, and why did that take place? And then you can realize you get into the specifics of, well, Craig was supposed to forecast how much material was needed for that project. He did not, or he did not order enough in time, or he did not reach out to that vendor. Whatever the specifics were, we want to make sure that we are not leaving the just saying, well, you're not working hard enough. Because we also have to be careful that we don't jump to conclusions early in this conversation.
Yeah.
Because I mean that's not what you want to happen. You want to really understand, and it may not be Craig's fault that this happened. Maybe this was on a vendor, or maybe this failure was on something else. So we want to try to, decipher that before we start playing the blame game.
Yeah. So that means it's a conversation, right?
Right.
It's not the boss talking to the employee. It is a conversation between the two. So you had first, this is why we are here, right? This is what we're
Yeah.
here to address.
And I think it's important you make that distinction that this is a dialogue, it's a
Mm.
conversation. This is not, I don't just call you in the office, close the door, and get up on my soapbox and go to town. Like this is very much, and I think it's not just with the performance coaching, it's with all the one-on-ones. I try to look at every interaction with a team member as a conversation. I think that for me to be able to achieve the outcomes that I want as a leader, I have to be willing to listen just as much as I am talking. And it's tough sometimes, especially if maybe this has been a big problem. Maybe this is not your first conversation. Like it's going to be real tough to not become emotional, pull Craig in there, start the blame game, and tell
Yeah.
him how he's been messing this up again.
Yeah.
But like you said, if we ask some of those questions and we pull it back just a notch to make sure that this conversation happens, we want them to feel like we are listening and we are understanding their perspective and their where they are in this process. And then also we've got, talking about what impact does it have on the team or the business.
Yeah.
Sometimes people don't realize the second and third order effects. I say, well, yeah, I didn't get those materials in on Tuesday, but they were here Wednesday. And it's
Right.
like, yeah, but they were supposed to ship out Wednesday, so they didn't ship out until Thursday. And the installs team was supposed to have them by then. And then you kind of walk them through that scenario. And sometimes people are like, I didn't realize. Like, I just thought it was here for next week or next month. I didn't realize that it was so time sensitive.
Yeah, so I'm reminded of when you fell off the mountain, Craig, because Craig couldn't stay to the left.
Yeah,
It delayed everybody, and it made the ranger instructor have to walk down the side of the
yeah,
mountain, and Craig almost died. So,
yeah.
like,
It
if
was. It
you
was a
know,
lot of. I mean that took a lot of time out of that entire organization there,
yeah,
that entire team. Created additional tasks. Created, you know, now that people weren't walking, they were cold, and
yeah,
so they
that
just
was
had to
cold,
stand there and
Craig.
shiver.
That was very cold.
Yeah. If it makes you feel better, I was also very cold and
Also
terrified of
very
falling in
cold.
the water.
Like, so even on something like this, like if it's a big mess up, right?
Hmm.
Like somebody was supposed to release the minimum viable product, like you said, on Wednesday, and they didn't until Thursday.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's gonna be things stacked up behind that to support it, right? I think about all the marketing campaigns, the conversations with any
Yeah.
other stakeholders. So if somebody misses something, you have to address, hey, okay, so this is what we're here to talk about today. The fact
Yeah.
that the minimum viable product wasn't released on time. And this is the problems that it has created, right? So you kind of talk about the problem, right? And give all the context to the problem first.
And and then I think that's when you can kind of shift into setting those clear expectations,
Hmm.
which goes back to those standards
Yeah.
you brought up. Is this is all based around this is not when, a leader just doesn't like something. This goes back to standards that are clear and objective. But at this point in the conversation, we can talk about what is the expected level of performance.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, do you remember a month ago when you agreed in that update meeting that yes, you will release this product on this date? It's like, and that's a question. They'd be like, oh no, I thought that I said this, or I thought that, or whatever the case is. You get that buy-in from them to realize, because really it's, you want to make sure that you both agree to what the problem is. You both agree to what that expected level of performance or standard was and how you're measuring success. Because I think what metrics we're using is very important. Because if I always use the example of making nails, because if I make nails for a living and you judge me by how many nails I make, I'm probably going to make little tiny brad nails. But if you judge me by
Yeah.
the weight of these nails, I'm going to make railroad spikes. So we have to be careful that there's not confusion over the metrics.
That's a
Like
great
one,
point.
and it could be as simple as close a business. To some people, close a business means 4 or 5 o'clock. To other people, it just means before I leave for the day. So if it happens at 8 o'clock at night, that's fine. It's before I went home and I got it done this day. And having that conversation, say, okay, how do we measure success? What are the clear expectations? And that can be just a point to clarify, because like you said, we have to start all this process before we start telling somebody how to get better. We've got to realize what the problem is, what we're measuring here, what we're expecting, and we're basing it all. Hopefully we have done our one-on-ones, whether it be monthly or quarterly, so we kind of have a frame of reference
Yeah.
to go back to.
Yeah. And so, yeah, talking about, things being measured, like we have the standards published. We talked about it, and we're going to measure uh, the different activities, right? Well, to provide proper feedback, we have to have that measurement,
Yeah.
right? So, because if we don't have that, we have no basis to say, how far off the mark they were,
Right.
right? So you have to have a form of measurement to really get things better.
Yeah, because it can't be based off someone's opinion.
Yeah.
You want to have some type of benchmark that you can look at those standards and say, okay, this is what we measure, this is how we measure it, and then this is what the results were.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And so, and really, so in our temple here, we've got is our third step is identifying the root cause. And I think that when we're trying to identify what happened, and after as we're having this conversation, this dialogue back and forth with our team member, this is when we really kind of get at what is preventing success. Is it a skill? Is it a resource? Motivation? Is it external? And have they encountered this before? And so if the very first time there's a problem and I say, well, hey, I just don't have the resources. I'm supposed to make however many nails of whatever type, but I just didn't have the metal to do it with. Okay. But if you continue to tell me this, at some point the leader has to inspect or check and see, are those resources actually getting delivered or not? We don't want it just to be an excuse, but this goes back to trust but verify. And knowing that, okay, well, I can see here on, maybe it's on my software or on my, you know, on my fancy Gantt chart, I can see that this stuff did take place that you're saying did not. And so we have to look into it further. But I think that at a performance level, we don't want to just assume it's motivation when it's really a skill. And we don't want to assume it's a skill when it's really a resource, because we want to fix the right problem. And we don't want to come back to this. We're trying to develop this team to where we can let them run with it and do as much as they want so we can look at bigger problems.
Yeah. So like you have to remember this person is already a member of the team, right? This is an employee in the company already. So we don't want to go in here into this event with a mindset that this is this is the they mess up all the time. We're gonna have to get rid of them. That this is not the way to handle that. And if you do go in there like that, and you do have the mindset that we're just gonna get rid of them. Well, now you have one less employee, right?
Yeah,
That you have to replace. So this is a mutually beneficial conversation,
right.
right? The idea is to keep this employee back on the track, right? And
Hmm.
so identifying that root cause is a way to help get them back on the track, going through this conversation. And to identify the root cause will hopefully prevent future problems.
Yeah, I mean, because we're trying to help our team members get better, which
Mm,
essentially helps the team get better. Because if we can stop this individual from having these problems, a lot of times too, you'll find that if you have a good conversation and figure out what the real problem is, you may find that it's not just one person.
yeah. Yeah.
Even if it's the skills, it's like, well, Craig, why, you're supposed to make 10 of these widgets a day and you're only making 8. And then you realize maybe it's a resource. He doesn't have, for his battery operated drill, he's only got 2 batteries when the guy next to him has 3. Seems insignificant, but maybe these 2 batteries are older, so he has to change them out more. They got to be charged. And so you realize that it has nothing to do with his motivation. He's not taking extra smoke breaks. It comes down to a battery and a tool. And so then what this helps us do is, well, we actually just hired a guy yesterday and we were just going to use some of our old tools or old equipment for him. We're probably going to run into the same problem. And so this conversation, we can actually prevent future problems if we're going about it like you said. We're coming into this trying to be a problem solver. We're not here to cast blame or be mad. We're here to solve problems. And really getting at that root cause is a piece of that, to where we can not just solve this one, but also prevent challenges in the future.
Hmm. Yeah. This isn't a coffee is for closers kind of situation.
No, this is not where we pull people in for our, psychological hazing. And so once we've determined what is the root cause, what's really going on here,
Hmm.
and I think that it's important that you kind of have agreement to that. And you're not always going to have 100% agreement. I mean, if you're telling Craig that he doesn't have the skills, he may think that he's the best welder that's ever walked the planet, and you're like, ah, man, that's you're sticking metal together. That barely counts as welding. So there may be some difference of opinion sometimes, but whatever we have concluded the root cause is, it's time to develop an action plan and really figure out, so what is it that we need to do? And I think the cautionary tale here is, as a leader, you can't just be like, okay, well, you need to get better at this.
Yeah.
We own some responsibility too.
Hmm. The whole idea, the whole point is to get better, right? To make
Yeah.
things better.
And
Yeah,
it's
saying this is your fault, you need to get better. That's not going to help. Not helpful.
no. And a lot of times too, depending on what the root cause is, they may not even be in a position to affect that.
Mhm.
Think back to the resources. The guy using the battery operated tools, he is probably not in a position to go buy 3 new Milwaukee batteries.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not his, that's not in his roles and responsibilities. And so as a leader, I may have to now source that for him. And maybe that's not even something I handle. I may have to call over to the warehouse and be like, hey, we need some more of this, or whatever our organization's process is. And so that's what I think is important about the action plan is, we gave some examples in here of what the resource needed is. Maybe if it's training. So, if I want to send somebody back to some refresher training, or they used to be on one product line and now they're doing something a little bit different. And so they used to MIG weld, now they're doing TIG welding. They hadn't done that in a while, and I want to send them through some refresher training. I may have to go to my boss and get the funding to send them to that training. Because I'm not just going to say, hey, man, you need to go get some training. Again, as a leader, I own some responsibility in helping them meet the standards because we're here to set conditions.
Yeah. It's almost like you have to give them everything you can so that they're the ones that mess up.
Yeah.
That's not the attitude to go into this with, right? But like, provide them everything you can so that the rest is up to them. All they have to do is do the work, right? If you want to look at it that kind of way.
Yeah. But you're setting the conditions for them to be successful. So
Yeah. Yes.
you're giving them everything that you possibly can.
It's a much better way to put it, Craig.
Yeah. Well, but you're right though. I mean, it is. It's essentially like, look, I've done everything except build it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, short of me coming down there and being the manual labor, I have created this environment for you to be successful. And so I just think when we talk about the action plan, we need to consider things that, like, who owns that? What is the
Yeah.
responsibilities to who? And we've got in our little chart here, so who attends the training? Well, the employee has to do that. There's going to be dates involved, but we may have to then go and get that funding. We may implement a new tracking system. So who's responsible for that? Well, do they have access to that software? And then check-ins. I think it's important for us as leaders we come up with this action plan, and maybe this is our 30-day plan to get better. Maybe it's 90-day plan to get better. Whatever it is, we don't want to wait 30 or 90 days before we revisit this conversation. I mean, I think that I a lot of times think that at least once a week, we can probably carve out 10 or 15 minutes to walk down to wherever this individual is, have a short conversation. Hey, man, how's it going? You need anything else? Is this working? Is this training good? Did you get the batteries? Like, you just got to check in and make sure that the plan is developing the way you thought it was.
Yeah. This could be one of those informal meetings, right, where you have to be present as a leader. I like that example. I do want to highlight though, like each of these columns are important, right? You've got to have each one. You can't say, okay, well, clearly, you need more batteries. Okay, step 5. Well, no, okay, so
Yeah. Yeah,
the
that's not
action
a
step,
plan.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the action step, you get more batteries, right? Who's going to do that? Is the employee responsible for walking down and do that? Does he have the authority, or does she have the authority? Or does the leader have to make the phone call over, or whatever it is? And when is that going to happen? Because there's a suspense to it, right? Because if you leave that open ended, problem might not get solved, right? You might go down there to talk to them in 2 or 3 days. Are we doing better here? What's how we at? Where are we at on this? He's like, well, I never got the batteries.
Yeah.
Well, now you just wasted 2 or 3 more days, right?
Yeah, you're right. It's like the task to be accomplished is not the plan.
Mm,
And I think a lot of times, especially leaders are busy. And so we have this conversation, and then we look down, we're like, oh man, look how much I got to get to this other meeting. So just make sure you get some more batteries. And then, if this may be a junior employee who is not going to tell you and admit they don't know how to do that.
yeah, yeah, great point.
And so then they're thinking like, well, I'm gonna go ask my buddy, he'll know. Well, they go ask their buddy, and he's like, well, I don't know. So and so got me these, or these are the same ones I've been using for the year and a half I've worked here, whatever the
Yeah,
case is. And so you may unintentionally not fix the problem because you didn't actually talk about the plan to fix it. You talked about the desired outcome, but you didn't actually talk about the action plan and who does what and who's responsible. And not to overcomplicate it, like you got to write out a 5-page paper of who buys some batteries, but you have to say, okay, hey, you need to talk to this person to get them ordered, or I will talk to this person to get them ordered. We should anticipate them being here by this date. Like you said, there's a suspense to this stuff. We don't just leave it open because we don't know, if this is a 30-day corrective plan, but the batteries don't show up for 60 days, we're not going to know if that was actually the problem. Because sometimes when what you think is the root cause may not be. You may have to adjust this plan later on.
yeah. So even if it's like a one-time event, right? Like they didn't hit release on the minimum viable product, and it came out 12 hours late, a day late, whatever it is. Okay, well, it's going to happen again at some point, right? We're
Yeah,
gonna have another event at some point, another release, right? Maybe a software update. So we can plan for that, right? Okay, we messed this one up. How do we make sure we don't mess up the next one, right?
exactly.
So it may be setting up, the timeline, and when we're agreed to it, putting a reminder in somebody's calendar, right? If that's how this employee functions. I couldn't function without alerts on my calendar, so you
Yeah,
know it, or maybe it's you get two people say, okay, I'm going to remind you the day before if that's what you need, right?
yeah,
And then the deadline to release that is like release minus 3 days. Perhaps the leader comes to the employee, says, okay, are we on track? Have you set the reminder? Right?
yeah.
And you don't have to be hovering over them the whole time to do that. But that can be sussed out during this conversation.
hmm
So
And
this
and
isn't
I've
just
actually,
for a battery ordering, a recurring thing. It can be for a one-time event
yeah,
because a similar event may happen in the future.
yeah. And to briefly mention the like calendar reminders, I know someone who for their team they actually send out all of the basically deadlines in the format of a Outlook appointment or reminder. They
Mhm.
schedule it as an event and they send it to their entire team so that they know that that stuff's on their calendar. And it's not to micromanage, it is so that, especially in that industry, they have some not calendar savvy individuals with Outlook. And so it is meant more as a, hey, you don't have to worry about that. I've got it for you. And
Yeah.
so they are setting the conditions for their team to be successful by just doing that small step of sending out those invites to those events to where now they know that those are on their calendar. And it's just a reminder, hey, this is due tomorrow or this is due next week. Little things like that can actually be very valuable for a team.
Yeah, it's a form of communication, right? A
Yeah.
fast, quick, easy way to communicate with everybody, to make sure everybody understands that, hey, on Thursday, this is due,
Yeah.
right? It's right there on the calendar.
And then this leads us into the fifth step we've got on this template of following up and accountability. And we've talked a little bit about, you have to review this progress. You have to track this. And this goes into, we've got this plan, but now how do we provide some oversight and provide some support? And again, it's not to micromanage. It is, what can I do to help you? And we're going to come in here, and whether it's we may find out that we need to relook a process internal or above us. It means I may have to go have a difficult conversation with my boss and say, hey, look, this other department's not supporting us. This is what we need to actually be able to achieve these things. And I'm going to tell my team member that and say, hey, look, I'm going to go try to figure it out from my end. But in the meantime, I need you working on this. And it may be kind of a two-pronged attack on getting some resolution. And then at the bottom here, I've got some little placeholders for signatures. And I do think it's important, whether any type of conversation that we're having where we're coming up with an action plan, I think putting those signatures on there is a good way to kind of get that buy-in of like, okay, this is what I'm responsible for. This is what you're responsible for. And we sign it. And I'm not saying this is an official contract,
Yeah.
but I think that it helps us maintain accountability to our standards.
Yeah.
And it prevents, because if you do have somebody that's problematic and this is the 18th month you've had the same conversation, and you have to really talk about, are they going to ever meet these standards, or do I need to find a new team member? And when they say, oh no, you never told me that, or
Yeah.
we never agreed to that, you do have some supporting documentation for that. And it's not meant to be an I got you, because I think that's the reason there's two signatures on there. I mean, I used to tell my guys, like, look, this goes both ways. This is to keep me accountable too. I'm telling you what I'm going to do to support you, and this are my expectations of how you can get better.
Yeah. It is actually the physical act of signing the document, right? There's something to that that really kind of cements it in people's minds. And yeah, you're right. You can go back and look at this and say, look, this is what we agreed to. You sat here. We talked about this. You signed this.
Yeah.
This is what we talked about.
Yeah, and there's always too, and I don't mean this to be like a finality thing. Like if something changes next week, you can have another conversation and change your mind and be like, you know what, we got to pivot. This happened. This isn't the case. We can adjust. This is not like a final, like, I'm like, oh no, well, we signed it and it said that we were going to do it this way. Like, no,
So I got to do it this way.
Yeah, we've talked about leaders can change standards. You just can't ignore them.
Mm.
And so going back to that, like if the leader needs to change the standard, that's fine. That's what you're there for. You're the leader.
Just gotta make sure you communicate it, right?
Yeah, you got to communicate it. Like there's more steps that, like, again, that's the outcome. There has to be a plan for how you're going to change that standard. But don't feel like you're now like, well, we signed this, we're tied to it. And it's like, no, like there's a waiver for everything. That's one thing I learned in the Army. There's a waiver for everything. It's
an exception to every policy.
I need? Yeah. It's like, is it my boss, my boss's boss? It's like, how high up does it go? But at some point, there's a waiver. So, but we hope y'all find some value in this, and that this will be a useful tool, because we're trying to not just talk about things at a theoretical level, but also be able to provide y'all some tools that are hopefully useful and you can use in your leadership journey. All right, we appreciate y'all, and I hope y'all have a good day.
Thanks, everybody. As always, take these lessons, use them, and spread them. Everyone is welcome in the cohort.
Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe for more, and drop us a line at commandpostcohort.com to request a specific topic.
We'll see you next time on the cohort.